Antonio Conte really spoke about that after the game against Arsenal. They had moments where they could have easily got a goal. Today it felt like they had equally as many of those. But that's a tough place to go and play. That's a good side. They won the Europa League for a reason. And I thought it was a good game, but I thought it was a good response from Tottenham. Just that final third is where they need to work on. They
did look like they had more control of the game to that in the North London derby, didn't they, Crouchy?
Yeah, much more control, much more possession than that. I think, obviously, it was the final ball that was the issue. But I think if you didn't watch that game and you saw the result, you'd think, they've played a similar way. They've sat back and they haven't put any impetus into the game, but they deserved better. I think it was a much improved performance, and there was definitely some plus points.
So we all agree it was the final ball that was the problem, and we will delve into that a little bit later on. But let's just bring you up to date with what's been going on at Anfield. It is time for us to take a quick break here in the studio, but after which we will be analysing exactly how tonight's game played out in Frankfurt. It was a frustrating night for Spurs, but they did pick up a valuable point away from home, and we'll bring you some reaction straight after this. Match day 3 in the Champions League has seen a goalless draw between Frankfurt and Spurs. Kane came close. Conte will be pleased with his team's performance for sure, but he'll be disappointed with the fact they couldn't take all 3 points because they had plenty of chances, although it was a valuable point away from home. There is a story of the game in numbers. I guess what does stand out is the possession stat, because we've talked so much this season about Spurs not controlling games, and they edged the possession stat there. How do you reflect on the performance overall, though, Jermaine?
I think it was a very good performance. I think from the possession point of view, Eintracht brought something different to the table. I don't think they pressed as high, so I think the players weren't under as much pressure as they were on Sunday when Arsenal were right on top of them and testing them under pressure. Eintracht Frankfurt were happy to kind of sit deep, and that kind of suited Tottenham in midfield to gain some control. So, the jury for me is still out in terms of whether I still are trying to lean towards the 3 in midfield, I think, to give them a bit more possession in Premier League games. But overall, as a performance today, I thought the front 3 worked their socks off, the midfield worked well. All of the components that you would expect in terms of a performance physically, work rate, tempo, aggression was great. The quality elements of what we expect from these top-level players and some world-class players was just still a little bit short. But I think maybe they've been a little bit low on confidence. It's going to come. I was much more positive after seeing that today than you were after kind of Sunday. Yeah,
that's exactly the word I was going to use. A bit more positive tonight, no?
Well, I think there's a lot of positives. A clean sheet, more possession. Everybody was going on about possession. I think against Arsenal, they only had 35%. So they had kept a clean sheet. Possession was there. It's just really the final third, and that's where they've got the best players. So I thought the chances were there. There was more than enough chances for them to go and win the game. Could have easily won the game. I'm sure Conte will be saying that after the game. But I thought they played well. Look, this is a tough place to go and play. That's one of the loudest stadiums they'll play in all season. And they were higher, they pressed better, and they got in some really good moments. It's just, it lacked a tiny bit of precision where normally these guys are brilliant in these areas, Crouchy.
Yeah, when you go through these chances, I mean, there's more than enough to win a game of football. It was much better. They created far more. We were talking about Son there. I just feel like, I don't know, it's just... Leicester, obviously, those chances were taken. It looks like he's trying too hard to go for the top corner. He just hit the target with the power he's got. He doesn't need to be so precise. But obviously the best opportunities did fall to Son.
Why do you think he is trying too hard?
He's had a slow start to the season. There's no doubt about that. And then after the hat-trick, he still wants to prove he's the main man in the team. It's a very thin line, that whole kind of like trying too hard thing, and it just coming to you naturally. I mean, from a forward's point of view, Crouchy probably can explain it better, but when you're scoring goals, you're not quite thinking about it. It's just happening. You're already in the positions. It's much more free-flowing. But I think the whole thinking about it is it's like a time thing. It's a bit like you're having to really think about that ball when you're taking the touch rather than it flowing and just being a part of your game. The work rate's there. That human Son that we all know is just a tiny bit short, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think being a striker and being in that position, I think I can sort of see when someone is snatching and someone who's tense. And although he got the hat-trick at Leicester, other than that, I still feel he is he is snatching at chances, and he's not quite there. Even with his final pass, you know, we saw it at Arsenal, we saw it again tonight. It's not quite happening for him. But obviously, he's a world-class player. It will happen. It's a matter of time. But at the start of this season, he's not quite there yet.
And actually, we saw signs of the Kane and Son partnership clicking a little bit, but it's still not clicking like it did last season, Owen.
No, but I think, look, they set incredible standards, but this is the Son we know. You know, little step-ups can go either side. I mean, that's a brilliant ball in. If anything, Romero probably puts Kane off. But it still feels like it needs a little bit of Kulusevski, that Son into Richarlison. That reminds me of York and Cole.
Ball
Yeah, he just hits that one a little bit too hard, Crouchy, doesn't he?
Yeah.
No man's land as well. It's right by his hip.
I
It's not on the floor,
think he
it's
was
not
a
in the
lot
air.
sharper tonight, really. And I thought he linked up with Kane brilliantly well, as these clips show. I just feel like that final ball, that final finish isn't quite happening for him.
I actually thought Harry Kane played really well tonight. I thought his hold-up play was back to where
That's brilliant.
it belongs. You know, of the front three, he was the most impressive, definitely.
So when we talk about that final ball, Crouchy, take us into the perspective from your position as a striker. How do you improve on that? Is it a case of just more time on the training pitch? Is it a case of watching your games back and
Crouchy
maybe
just
seeing,
used to knock it down. Like,
I mean,
there was
Crouchy's
no square
never...
ball.
I know you weren't in that
It wasn't
position.
the final ball. I was getting on the anything. The final ball, I leave that to someone else. I have no interest in the final ball.
But you know what, Seema? Kulusevski's the one. It's a bit like Kevin De Bruyne. When you watch the guys that create, they just take a tiny bit of more time. They just don't rush. And I think about Kulusevski. When I watch him, he's always under control. You know, he's not rushing. It's not hectic. He gets it onto his left foot and he puts it where Crouchy would have
Crouchy would just put it away.
I'd love to see him playing the 10th spot.
No, that's never going to happen.
But we have seen also, I mean, the final ball, but then also the lack of cutting edge in front of goal as well, which has been a bit of a problem for them.
Yeah, it certainly has, but I thought it was better tonight. But the two games, you know, recently that we've seen, there just hasn't been that, as you say, the final pass or the final bit of movement. But it was much sharper tonight.
Yeah. OK, well, let's head back to the ground and get some reaction. Here is Højbjerg talking to Jules Breach.
Pierre, it looked like a real battle out there. How are you feeling at the final whistle?
Not 100% happy. I thought we prepared, let's say, until the 16-yard box. We prepared the game well. We find the spaces well. We tried to get in behind them or in between them. I thought we did that well. But the opportunities we had, we didn't make it, let's say, to a 100% chance or use the opportunity to get a clear chance, you know, and that's... disappointing. It's easy to say, but I think the last bite needed a bit, you know.
Well, the approach play, as you mentioned, looks so promising tonight. When you're out there on the pitch and you can see that, how frustrating is it as players that you just can't find the back of the net? Yeah,
like I said, I thought we took the game well. We tried to be dominant. We tried to find the spaces and we tried to overcome their first pressure. I thought we did that okay. We came to the 16-yard box and then again, the last pass or the right run or the clear chance, you know, was not. Yes, we had chances, but I would have wished a bit more breathe and then put it in, you know.
Focusing on the positives, a clean sheet away from home, how important was that?
Listen, if you cannot win, you play 2-0, you don't lose the game, and the team presented themselves very mature, and from that side I thought it was good, and again, we are here, we are competing, and every game we are playing we want to win. Today we couldn't do it, disappointed with that, but I thought we deserved to win.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And actually, Højbjerg makes the point, actually, away from home against Frankfurt, who we spoke about in our build-up, a promising team, they're no pushover at all. So, in the end, I guess they've got to be happy with this point.
Well, yeah, but it's also nice to see kind of Pierre unhappy because obviously that's the standards that are at the football club now, and it's not very often as midfielders get to look forward and point the finger and say it's their fault. It's usually coming the other way and saying, you lot do your job and keep the ball out the back of the net. But it was clear that he kind of fell in line with what we've been talking about tonight. And I think he hit the nail on the head when it was just that kind of like, that breathe, you know, take your time and put the ball in the back. That's what we mean when we're saying that they're snatching a little bit too much when it comes to Son, or they're rushing a pass. You know, sometimes it's just kind of like, take a breath here, take another touch, and the picture might change and there might be another pass on, and that is where, I know he's not playing today, but that's what Kulusevski is brilliant at. So he sounded disappointed, but they'll be happy, I think, once the dust settles and they analyse the game and they kept a clean sheet, and Frankfurt they can take back to Spurs, and I think they'll be confident they can win that game there.
And looking at this 90 minutes from Frankfurt's perspective, they had their fair share of chances as well, didn't they, Owen?
Yeah, look, we said before the game that they'll have a go. You know, quite a positive side. They had little moments where they looked like they had too much respect for Tottenham, and then they had moments where it felt like they really grew into the game, and they had some good ones. That's a great ball from So, and Knauf makes a terrific run. I mean, look, I don't think it's an easy finish, you know, because the angle that he's coming on. But they had some really good moments where, you know, they're a positive side. You know, they like to get after you and press. You see that there on the edge of the box. Lindstrom, I thought he's got some real, we said before the game, he's got some great touches and he looked good tonight.
Yeah, I think Jermaine said it off air actually, like they're good, they get into good areas, they haven't got a killer, someone who can put the ball in the back of the net like, consistently. I just felt that they were just missing that. They were good up to a point, they just didn't have that ruthlessness.
Now, when we were talking, actually, you did say to me that you thought Bentancur had a good game tonight.
I thought him and Højbjerg were very good, but Bentancur just, I thought, edged it in that midfield area. He showed us a burst of pace that we didn't realise he had as well, by the way, when he drove forward with the ball. But he's got real quality, little nicks around the corner. It was a good performance from them both.
OK, well, it is time for a quick break, but plenty more still to come from us here in the studio. We're going to hear from the Spurs boss, Antonio Conte, when we return. We'll see you in just a moment. Well, here is a story of how the results have played out across Europe tonight. Napoli with a thumping win over Ajax. That's actually Ajax's biggest European defeat in history. And Napoli are now the Champions League highest goal scorers on 13 goals. Liverpool with a really important 2-0 win against Rangers in Group A. Club Brugge continue their fine campaign with a 2-0 win against Madrid. Porto with the same scoreline against Leverkusen. Bayern 5-0 against Pilsen. And they're now unbeaten in their last 31 group matches, which is a new Champions League record. Inter Milan beat Barcelona, Marseille with that 4-1 win over Sporting, and we've just seen the goalless draw between Frankfurt and Tottenham. And actually, seeing as we've just spoken about Marseille and Sporting, the other two teams in Group D, let's show you exactly how their match played out tonight. And Sporting actually got off to a really fast start with the quickest goal in the Champions League this season in 51 seconds, Owen.
Trincao, and we obviously know him from Wolves. He's a really good player. Can't let him get on his left foot, but the goalkeeper had an absolute stinker in this. Yeah.
It's one of them you shouldn't laugh about, but these are three of the worst goals you're likely to see a keeper concede, Crouchy.
Yeah, mate.
Where is he? He's not
I don't know where he's going there. And this here, I don't know what to say.
He had a bad one.
And then the sub-keeper comes on after the sending off, and which, I mean, you can clearly see he handballs this way out of the area. I mean,
Where's he going?
It's a shocker. But then the sub-keeper comes on and doesn't cover himself in glory either. But you know, a good night for Marseille, given the situation. They was in a must-win type situation for this type of game at home, and they got it done in Bemba with their last goal. So they'll be delighted.
This group's wide open now as well,
yeah.
isn't it? Like
Yeah.
it's anyone's.
It's not sort of what we expected, was it? We did think that perhaps Sporting and Tottenham would sort of run away with it and create a gap at this stage. But would you be worried if you're a Tottenham fan? Are you comfortable there, Owen?
No, Tottenham are the best team in the group. I think the other three are quite similar.
Yeah.
You know, Frankfurt, obviously, in their main season in the Champions League, this is all new for them. So I think so far they'd be quite happy with their return. Sporting, we've seen, you know, against Tottenham, they're a threat. Marseille, obviously, at home, they can be a threat as well. So I think there's still plenty to play in the group. I'm with Crouchy. I still think it's really open. But I think Tottenham are are the best team, and with their home games, they'll top the group.
Well, speaking of their home game, how important is the game next week against Frankfurt now, given the context of that table?
It's a must-win. This is the interesting part of the Champions League now, when it all starts kind of mapping out, and then you have a look at it and thinking, well, we need to win that game, But the fact that they've got Sporting, who are top of the group at the minute, and Frankfurt, who are just below them at home, I think is not only important, but I think Tottenham go into those games as big favourites, given I think what we've all seen over the course of their group so far.
And they have a lot of positives to build on from tonight as well, Crouchy, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Obviously, they need to put the ball in the back of the net, need to get that final pass correct, but it was definitely a big improvement from the weekend.
Does it help, though, now that every team has played each other in the group, they sort of know a bit about each other, they know what to expect?
Yeah, but Seema, the games away from home, we've been there in Europe, they're tough. They're completely different from the ones at home. So I just think for Tottenham, obviously they know what they're up against, but they're the favourites in the group. So they have more than enough firepower to go and win all the games. They're favourites in them. Just think, when Kulusevski's not playing, maybe Harry drops deeper. Maybe Charleston plays higher with Son. It just feels like they need another creator in this side. They've got so many great players and good finishers. But if Kulusevski's not there, it feels like Harry might need to take on that role more of creator and provider.
Actually, you do realise, don't you, in the games when you don't have the option of Kulusevski from the bench, how much he is missed?
Well, Crouchy mentioned it straight away. He looked at the team sheet, he looked at the bench and basically said, what have you got? And that's not a disrespect to the players on there, but you're always looking for something that's going to change the course of the game. And actually today they didn't have that. They turned to Brian Hill, Ben Davies came onto the pitch. There wasn't that, right, I've had a look at this from the outside, like when Son came on against Leicester. So it just shows you that, the issues they have. He obviously doesn't fancy Jed Spence or Basuma, these new players that have come in. He just wants to stick with what he's got.
And it's interesting you mentioned Basuma, because against Leicester he did bring Basuma on, didn't he? And he had a midfield three in the end. And that seemed to work quite well. Would you like to see more of Basuma?
Yeah, I think so. I think Jermaine touched on it, just a bit more control if you've got that three. And I think certainly in Europe, if you come up against teams with three and you do lose something in there, you lose a little bit of control of the game. But Kulusevski definitely brings something extra. I think when you look at Son and Richarlison, they're goal threats. They're not creators. I think they're not. Kulusevski's, he's got a bit more guile to his play. He's someone that can slip passes in. He can delay and play the right balls. I think Son and Richarlison, in some ways, want to play a similar way to Kane. They want to be the ones scoring goals and not as creative, maybe. And they miss that because they have two, midfielders that perhaps aren't the most creative as well, and it's difficult.
OK, well, we're going to head straight back to the ground and get some reaction from the Tottenham manager. Here is Antonio Conte.
Antonio, a hard-fought point. What's your assessment of the match?
But the match was a good match. I think we played a match with great intensity. We didn't allow them to play their football, and we pressed a lot in every area of the pitch. At the same time, I think that we had to be more clinical. We had to be more clinical because we created many chances to score, and instead, at the end, we are talking about a draw. A good draw, because it's not easy to play away with this atmosphere, a lot of noise around of us. I think that my players cope with this situation very well. We played a good game, but you know very well, if you don't score, you don't win, and at least you drew, and we got 1 point today.
How do you begin to try and rectify the scoring goals problem at the moment then, and being more clinical?
But for me, the most important thing to create chances to score. Then there are moments that you are more clinical and in every chance you go to score. There are moments like the game against Arsenal and today that you create chances, but sometimes you made a mistake in the last pass, so you arrive 1 second late in the ball, or you shoot out. But it's important to create chances. I think the game was good for us, and we played with a great personality here, and then we'll see. In 1 week we have another game against them.
Thanks, Antonio.
Thank you very much.
He does have another game against them, and in that game, it's going to be really important that, as we just discussed, that they do get something from it because they are at home. And Owen, you've pointed something out a number of times, that this is a manager that doesn't seem to have a plan B. Is that what's hindered him, do you think, in the Champions League? No,
because if you look at, the way Real Madrid won the Champions League, you can win it kind of playing on the counter-attack. I think the problem is, in the past, he's managed teams that, didn't have the spending power that the biggest teams had, so he's had to play this way. And with JJ, he said before the game, this is their best way of winning the Champions League. I just think everybody knows their formation, how they're going to play. So maybe sometimes there's no real surprise element in there, but I just think for him, he would argue those Juventus teams, they didn't have the investment, the Inter team, they didn't have the investment that the bigger teams had, and that's why they went out in the rounds that they did.
Well, at some point, he needs to get these other players, these fringe players, into the game. The players that he's bought, Jed Spence, Matt Doherty, Yves Bissouma, he obviously don't feel like they're ready now, but for them to kind of like progress in all competitions, they need to be getting more minutes. He keeps mentioning how many games there is to play. If they're not playing over the next couple of weeks, I'll be very surprised, and they need to get up to speed and get some confidence in them.
Is it that they're not up to speed, or do you think he just doesn't trust them? Because he seems to like to stick to the same 11, doesn't he? Yeah, no, I do think there's an element of lack of trust in them. I think with Bissouma and Spence as well, I'm not sure. We're not with them every day in training. I think there's a definite lack of belief in starting them, and I don't actually think it's a problem with personnel. They look at the personnel on the pitch today. I just think tactically, if you have those players sat back as far as they are, you do find it difficult to hurt teams. I think certainly he has to be able to adapt at home, especially when there's teams that you should be rolling over. There's teams there that you can, with that personnel, you can go and run all over, go and beat them. You don't have to sit back all the time. I think with the players you've got, I think you can be. I know it's not his way, but I do think there are times where you have to be more expansive. You have to go and beat teams in front of you. And you'd like to think that with the games coming thick and fast in the Premier League and the Champions League, we might see a bit more rotation. Well, our action continues on BT Sport tomorrow night, and Celtic are in search of their first win of the group stage at Leipzig. Chelsea host Milan at Stamford Bridge, while Manchester City welcome Copenhagen to the Etihad, looking to continue their perfect start to the group stage. 4 other games coming up tomorrow night. PSG, Real Madrid and Juventus are all in action. And of course, don't forget that Champions League tonight is up next over on BT Sport 2, and you can watch all of the goals from tonight's Champions League games, there were plenty of them, before 11 o'clock, and have your say in the conversation with Jake, Rio, Michael and Ali McCoy by using the hashtag UCL Tonight. Thank you, gents, for your company. Really enjoyed it. Thank you for yours. So Spurs pick up a valuable point away from home. It's all to play for next week. We'll see you then. Good night.